Now, what I thought I would do is to begin by asking Chetan about his experiences and his reactions that led to the artwork here. There are, as you can see, oils, there are charcoal drawings, there's sculpture. All of them very, very striking in my view. And, extraordinarily, by an extraordinary coincidence, I'm going to just hold up this little piece of news that I spotted just this very morning in the Indian Express, which actually happens to deal with this kind of stuff that we are going to talk about. So to set the scene, what we'll be speaking of are the coal fields of this country, the coal mining regions, which are concentrated in the eastern part of the country and the central part. There are not that many in the north, not that many in the south or the west. And these coal fields, of course, have performed the function of supplying a very large part of the nation's energy needs. And therefore, they've been extolled in many ways. The sort of nationalist rhetoric has been that these mines, just like the hydroelectric dams built in the 50s and the 60s, have fueled this self-sufficiency in energy that we possess, luckily. But what has not been spoken of all that much, and we saw that that whole thing flare up during the Narmada Bachao Andolan. What has not been spoken of all that much is the price that has been paid in order to get all this in place, especially the human price that has been paid, and the natural price, the loss of landscapes, of forests, and on the human front, not just displacement, but also loss of immemorial ways of living. It's not just culture, a static culture. It's not just lifestyles. These are immemorial ways of living that have been extinguished at a stroke when people are displaced from one region to another. And no matter how fair or substantial the compensation, so to speak, is for these people, nothing really can replace the lives, the ancestral memory that they have of the land that they have lived on. And that is something that Chetan speaks of through his art. And in fact, the title of this exhibition is At Memory's Shore, right? And that's to do with how, again, a timeless memory, maybe stretching back centuries, is all of a sudden obliterated, in the sense that you don't even have the landscape left that you can relate those memories to. And what that then means for at least 2 or 3 generations down the line, once, let's say, these mines have been set up, what that means for 2 or 3 generations, because beyond that, not even that memory will be left, is the fear, and perhaps is the realistic expectation. And to come back to this news clipping, just this morning, here it is in the Indian Express, and a news item on exactly this sort of thing, this sort of conflict, where, as it happens, again by sheer coincidence, in the so-called northern coal fields of this country, and when they say northern coal fields, it's only in a self-reflexive way, that is to say, only in relation to the geography of the coal fields. This is not in the north of India. The northern coal fields are in Madhya Pradesh. But in those coal fields, there is this place called Singrauli, the headquarters of those coal fields, where, as it happens, I've actually lived for some time. And over there, there is, and you read about it all the time, there is a so-called coal block being auctioned to private bidders. So now what governments are doing is not just taking control of the mining themselves, but also inviting corporates to do the mining and bid for essentially the land under which the seams of coal are present. And all these regulations are laid down. If someone bids successfully for a piece of land, and when I say piece of land, these are many square kilometers of land, tens of square kilometers. Such is the scale of coal mining these days. So all the regulations are laid down that if a company, a corporate firm starts mining that land, then what are the norms to be followed in resettling the people that are displaced? What are the financial compensations that must be guaranteed? And there are others, so-called benefits and compensations given, such as schooling to children and so on and so forth. And over here, this article talks about exactly this sort of thing happening. A private firm taking over a huge piece of land, and the disputes around that. So people who have been displaced and dispossessed saying they have not been compensated adequately, they have not been compensated according to the norms laid down. And the corporate firm, of course, saying, no, we have followed the rule book, we're going by all the statutes, and so on and so forth. And this sort of thing is going to now, I'm sure, last decades. The courts being what they are. So I thought that I would start by reflecting on these sorts of things with Chetan, because Chetan has grown up in land that is now encompassed by the so-called western coal fields. And the western coalfields are also very much bang in the middle of the country. They are in eastern Maharashtra, around Nagpur, let's say. And then there is another fairly big city over there, south of Nagpur, called Chandrapur. Chandrapur is actually rather more famed as the hub through which the Tadoba Tiger Reserve can be accessed. And the Andhari Tadoba Tiger Reserve is, of course, not just India famous, but almost sort of globally famous for its holdings of wildlife. Chandrapur and the region around Chandrapur is a huge mining belt because there are coal deposits found over there. And as it happens, Chetan grew up near Chandrapur, and his father was actually a miner with the mines over there. To begin with, his father was working in the underground mines, and later on those mines became what are known as open pit or open cast mines. And just to tell you a little bit about this, because it can set the scene to some degree. Underground mining is when, if you've detected coal under the surface, what you do is to dig a vertical shaft, and that can be something like 100 or 200 meters down into the ground. You dig that vertical shaft, and it's a big enough shaft for lifts to go up and down in. I can say this from first-hand experience because I've been in those. My father also was with the coal mines. And then from that shaft, you have these lateral tunnels branching out, and those tunnels are the ones into which the miners go and then pick the coal from the walls out of. So their job is to just hack away at the walls of these tunnels, take out the coal, and then that's brought up through the shaft. So then what happens is, to some degree, there's minimal devastation of the surface. You're just going down and then sideways within the earth. With open pit mining or open cast mining, so one of the dangers of this sort of underground mining was that if there was a flood in the mine, or if there was a fire or something like that, or any other accident, then people were doomed by and large, unless evacuation happened really, really speedily, because they were trapped. They were trapped in these tunnels. So one of the arguments in favor of this other kind of mining, the more modern mining, which is open cast mining, is that you just do away with these shafts and you just excavate the whole of that region where coal is to be found. Just dig a big bowl into the earth, big deep bowl, and that's what then calls for moving people away, moving entire villages away, digging up that whole, making a huge trench, and then you just hack away the coal from the wall of this amphitheater, huge amphitheater. So the argument in favor that is given of open pit mining is that it's safer, of course, safer than underground mining. So Chetan's father has worked in the underground kind of mine as well as in the open cast sort of mine, and Chetan at first hand has seen the kinds of things that happen, with especially with open cast mining, where you have displacement, dispossession, and this imminent loss of even your memory of the landscape. So I'll ask Chetan first of all to reflect on how he came to do these paintings and this artwork, the sculpture. Because apparently he grew up around there, but then he moved away for a while. He was in Baroda, he was in Chhattisgarh. And then when he returned to those old familiar landscapes, they were unrecognizable from what they had been. So he just couldn't quite get over the shock of the transformation that had happened, because in the meantime these mines had come up. And his artwork is a response, I believe, to some of that shock that was experienced, some of the startlement and a psychological sort of displacement, not just physical but also psychological, temperamental displacement from one's familiar terrain.
मैंने मास्टर्स मेरा बड़ौदा से हुआ है, तो मैंने 3 साल 4 साल पहले से फिर क्योंकि मैंने गैप लिया था बैचलर के बाद, तो मैंने उस टाइम से उस लैंडस्केप को डॉक्यूमेंटेशन और उस लैंडस्केप को ये कर रहा था, क्योंकि उसके पहले मैं फार्मर्स को लेके काम करता था, क्योंकि चंद्रपुर में मोस्ट ऑफ द जो ये है अपना जॉब के या फिर उनका अर्निंग का जो सोर्स है वो एग्रीकल्चर लैंड से है। तो मैं उसके बारे में बात करता था कि वो कैसे अफेक्ट होते हैं या फिर वहाँ पे अभी कैसा फार्मर्स का सिचुएशन है करके। फिर मैंने माइनिंग्स के बारे में रिसर्च चालू किया और आर्टिकल्स पढ़ना चालू किया उस रीजन के बारे में। तो मुझे पता चला कि वहाँ पे वो चीज़ें कैसे कनेक्टेड है, क्योंकि जो माइनिंग कंपनीज़ होती है उनको रिफॉरेस्टेशन करना रहता है, तो उनको नेटिव्स जो प्लांट्स होते हैं वो उनको लगाने रहते हैं। लेकिन वो लोग क्या करते हैं कि वहाँ पे एक ऑस्ट्रेलियन बबूल आता है, तो वो बहुत इजीली ग्रो होता है। उसका रेशो अगर एक पेड़ लगाओ तो उसका रेशो ऐसा 30 का 40 का है, क्योंकि ऑटोमेटिकली वो ये करते जाता है। तो वो लोग ऑस्ट्रेलियन बबूल को ये करते हैं, प्लांट करते हैं। तो उसके वजह से क्या होता है कि वहाँ का जो वाइल्ड लाइफ है वो पूरा खेतों की तरफ मूव हो जाता है। तो उसके वजह से अगेन कि वो एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर में अफेक्ट होता है। तो फिर मैंने कोल माइनिंग को बारे में पढ़ना और उसके बारे में डॉक्यूमेंटेशन, लोगों के इंटरव्यूज़ लेना चालू किया। फिर तो वहाँ से मेरा ये कोल माइनिंग्स का ये हुआ, क्योंकि मेरे पापा जब माइंस में थे तो हम क्वार्टर्स में रहते थे, इनके कोल माइनिंग के क्वार्टर में। तो हमारा घर रोज़ 4 बजे 5 बजे के टाइम पे शेक होता था बिकॉज ऑफ द ब्लास्टिंग। तो वो एक मेरा पहला ये था, क्योंकि उसमें हमारे रीजन में जो लोकल ये है फ्रेजेस है उसमें बोलते हैं, मतलब मराठी में है कि माइनिंग झाली भांडे वाजली म्हणजे ब्लास्टिंग झाली। मीन्स अगर बर्तन बज रहे किचन के तो क्या माइनिंग में ब्लास्टिंग हो रही है, समझ जाओ। मैंने वो एक फ्रेज से मेरा एक पहला काम चालू किया था माइनिंग्स को लेके, जहाँ पे मैंने एक काइनेटिक स्कल्पचर बनाया था जो शेक होता था टाइम टू टाइम में, जो कि बहुत एक्सपीरियंशियल था। तो वहाँ से मेरी माइनिंग्स को लेके जर्नी चालू हुई। फिर मैंने क्वेश्चंस कि वो लैंडस्केप हमसे ही कहाँ कैसे हमारे लिए ही एक्सेसिबिलिटी उसकी कैसे ये कर दे, क्योंकि माइनिंग्स के एरिया में वो ये रहता है, प्रोहिबिटेड रहता है एरिया। वहाँ पे तुम कुछ एक्टिविटी नहीं कर सकते, फोटोज़ नहीं ले सकते। दे आस्क फॉर परमिशन कि मैनेजर्स की परमिशन लेके आओ। सो माई क्वेश्चन वॉज एट दैट टाइम कि ये लैंड तो मेरा ही था, मैं इसी लैंडस्केप में घूमते आ रहा हूँ बचपन से, फिर अचानक से मुझे क्यों परमिशन लेनी पड़ी, ये सब सर्कुलेशन कैसे हुआ, क्योंकि बहुत सारी एक्टिविटीज़ उसके वजह से चेंज भी हुई है बिकॉज ऑफ द माइनिंग, कल्चरल एक्टिविटीज़ भी चेंज हुई है वहाँ पे।
But let me just say that Smita is the founding and chief editor of a brilliant literary magazine called Usawa. Please look it up on the web, maybe after this, usawa.in. And she's doing a really wonderful job of curating fantastic, sets of articles, fiction, poetry, all of that in that magazine. And also she is a writer herself, poet as well as stories. I am Rohit, and I am for my salary, I'm with the IIT, the Indian Institute of Technology in Powai. Work there, and the science interests me as well. It's not as if the science is a put off. And in my moonlighting time, I like to write. So I've brought out 3 or 4 books. Well, I've written 3 novels. 2 of them have been published, and I've also written a history. And I'm just in case you get interested, I've got a few copies of my novels here. If you'd like to sort of pick them up, they're up for sale at a decent price.
And it was because of a speck of coal dust that I came in touch with Rohit many years ago, because that book was excerpted by Amit Chaudhary in the Picador Book of English Literature, and I grew up in Dhanbad, so it was very, very special to see somebody writing about that. And then I requested to find out about his contact, and I met him and so on. So yeah, these are 2 novels, and recently he has won for Enclave, right? Enclave won at the Kalinga Lit Fest. So he's an award-winning professor and an award-winning novelist, not just drawing his salary from IIT. So yeah,
that remains the prime purpose. But anyway. Oh, thank you. That's too kind of you, Smita. Thanks very much, indeed. And I thought that the other thing one of the other things that we could talk about are our own experiences of the coal mining regions in relation to the art that we have over here. And I should one question first of all: is my voice carrying over all right, or do I need to be? I hope I'm not too loud either. That's fine. I should point out that right here, among the largest of the oils is in fact a depiction of an open cast mine. So you can see that the landscape has been utterly devastated. The original level of the land would have been somewhere around here. It's been hollowed out, and that's part of the title, hallowed earth, hollowed out. So we hollow out the land, and then from the surface of the walls, the coal is picked out. But then you have a great number of troubles associated with all this, because the minerals, other than the coal, there are a host of other minerals over there, and they then tend to poison the soil, the water, the surrounding regions, and so forth. And I asked Chetan about this. I asked, why have you colored the water such a brilliant, I said lurid, but let's say brilliant turquoise. And he said, well, that's what it is like. Once, let's say, the minerals, or copper and cobalt and so on have leached into it. So it's not even water that people can use anymore. Presents a rather surreal, garish appearance. And as you can see, the whole area becomes barren of the original vegetation and so forth. And very often, the color of the water that you see around the coal fields, around the mines, is the color of the water shown, if I may point you in that direction, shown in the leftmost of this triptych. These three smaller paintings over here, and that pond over there. Believe me, this is very often what the water looks like, because it is just filled with coal dust and other sorts of dust, concrete dust, sand, but essentially coal dust. It actually turns a jet black almost. And that painting and the couple of others by it are Chetan's wonderful imaginative capture or appropriation of Monet, as he himself says. So Monet's lilies, and what they look like, and here you have lilies growing in somewhat different kind of element almost. It would be a travesty to perhaps even call it water. It's been transformed into something else. And I have seen ponds of this kind, lakes of this kind, again, a really garish purple pink in color. So it all depends upon what sorts of minerals are leaching into the water. Much of the natural water in and around the coal fields is not potable for that reason. There's plenty of water, but water everywhere and not a drop to drink, that sort of thing. So, Smita, I'll ask you to perhaps reflect on some of these sorts of things.
Sure.
When you were growing up in the coal fields, for one thing, did it strike you that this was an almost surreal landscape that you were living in, or as a child does one just take it for granted that, well, this is what the world is largely like, and we grow up in it? And the second is, did it ever intrude upon your consciousness that a very great human price has to be paid for the sort of things, the mining that is going on?
Yeah. So interestingly, I've grown up in 3 towns in Jharkhand, Dhanbad, Ghatshila and Giridih, all mining towns. My father was not in the mining industry, he worked for a bank, but somehow those are the towns we lived in. And one of the earliest memories I have of being inside a mine is when I was very young, I think 5 years old or something. It's only the fear because of which I remember it. And it was, so one of my great uncles was at a very high post in BCCL, and they had just imported this very fancy machine from Germany. And another aunt of ours, a cousin of ours, was visiting from the US. So as a touristy thing, so my mom, my aunt and I, we had gone on invitation. And I don't remember much of it except that the noise, I was so young that I cried and I was inconsolable. After that, I can't say that I cared much about it. We were all busy growing up. We were all busy in our childhoods. In Giridih, yes, I do remember that, the soil used to have mica. It would sparkle of mica. In Ghatshila, in the city, it's not even a town, it's not even a district. In the town, there were copper mines which were completely going broke. They had no money. And there were uranium mines a little way off, out of Ghatshila. But somehow as I grew up, I think somewhere around when I started turning 20 or so, somehow when one grows up and starts becoming aware of the effect of natural disasters on life, on love, the possibility of how it might hurt loved ones and so on, then somehow Jharya became a part of my consciousness and never left. um, then I started reading up on it, and it's so interesting, Chetan, to see your work. And your work is coming out from Maharashtra, and even when I went to Nairobi and I got to know about the mines there, I've always had this fantasy that somewhere under the earth there would be some city that would be there for all the people who have been displaced by mines globally. Like, it's a very juvenile, childlike thing. But I mean, the way this happens, the way the earth is just scooped out, cut out like a cake, of course, much more perverse. But and in when I was growing up, yes, I did hear of um, Jharya, those flames would sometimes be seen from the road. And this, actually, in your work, this has been very, very striking for me, because land subsidence and breaking of houses like this, just cracking, just breaking, cracks. I don't think there's a single house in Jharya without cracks. Right? So that's how. And then as one grows and reads and somehow wants to educate oneself, then my preoccupation became about the women and children in these neighborhoods, in the spaces, in the places, geographies that have been disturbed by mining activity. And then I found out that there are women working in mines, although it's illegal. So what happens is that they end up working below minimum wages. They have no protection, no, I mean, it's the most, I think, precarious labor force, one of the most precarious labor forces in the world. And they would be getting like 2 rupees to carry some coal from here to there. When they die, even their names are not written in government records because it's illegal. So those things have now, it's dehumanization of a very different kind. I'm not saying that we shouldn't use energy. I'm not saying any of those things. I'm simply saying that there are people there. There are people, real people. And then I wanted to sort of go and find out about what happens to the animals and so on. And I said, I had to stop myself. I said, let's just step back and let's just work on this, whatever, the people, the kids. Because there was a very bad land subsidence in 2017, 24th of May, where Rahim and Bablu, a father and a son, were pulled into the earth, right? Morning 8 o'clock something. I had gone to Jharya just for like a pilgrimage, I don't know. And I went to see that spot. There's no marking there. There's nothing. It was a heap of garbage. Lots of these thermocol plates that we dump after using, single usage. There was a stray dog, and my partner Ashish, I mean, he was very scared that I wanted to actually go there. But then I said, subsidence doesn't happen like that. It's not going to strike at the same place over and over again. But the callousness and the fact that there's no change. The fact that people are okay with that, the fact that people in Jharya were promised homes, the homes are in such a place where they cannot live. So there are these 4 or 5 very old gentlemen who are fighting to retain their homes. They are fighting a legal battle in Supreme Court now. There's a Dhanbad born lawyer who is working with them pro bono, but obviously nothing's going to happen. It's an open cast mine now. I think at that time, the story was that it's about to go to Adani's. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Smita. In fact, just before you arrived, a remarkable coincidence again, I brought to the attention of everyone here this news item that's appeared this very morning for the Singrauli coalfields, talking about exactly this sort of thing, the compensation and all that going awry. So you brought up land subsidence, and Chetan also spoke about the fact that when there is blasting going on, you need to have some very, extremely powerful explosives in order to hollow out such vast basins of land. Um, and Chetan spoke about the tremors that can be felt. The houses, in fact, houses can actually start developing cracks. The walls can start developing cracks, and that's what he's portrayed in his sculptures. Please take a look at the sculptures. They're an extremely evocative portrayal of what can happen to even the physical constructs of that life. People can lose their homes not because they're being uprooted from their houses, but because their houses are crumbling under the force of the explosives. And the other thing that happens that eats away at the land is the coal itself, the coal that is sought to be mined. And the reason for that is that coal has this rather perverse property of going up in flames even while it is left untouched underground. So it can just catch fire on its own, spontaneous combustion as it's called, and then that fire just spreads wherever the seams of coal are. So if you can imagine this, imagine a vast network of lines under the ground. All these lines are seams of coal, and fire erupts at one point and just starts spreading along this whole network.
Yeah, and it's in various layers.
It's in various layers.
Like three-dimensional. It's not just.
Oh yes, absolutely. It's depth as well.
Yeah.
And what that does is to make the substructure extremely weak, of course, because it's being hollowed out underneath, and the land starts to subside. So, in fact, if I may take the liberty of reading out a small passage from my book, I had actually this book, A Speck of Coal Dust, is written from the viewpoint of a boy around 11 or 12 years old, growing up in the coal fields and just reacting to what he sees around him, the kind of life he has. It's actually not a polemical book, so it's not a novel about the devastation that is visited on the land and so on primarily. It's about the life of the child and what he notices about these various facets of coal country. So I'll just because this thing about land subsidence came up, I thought I'll quickly read this out. So as they approached Bhuliti is in my book the fictional name for Jharia, and Jharia is the epicenter of all this coal mining. That whole region is known as the Jharia coal fields. So this is a town in what is now Jharkhand, was earlier southern Bihar. So as they approached Bhuliti, still a kilometer or two from it, a sweet malodorous vapor, instantly recognizable, blew into the car, and the boys started to shout. The boys are Vipul, who is the protagonist of the novel, and his brother. Rotten eggs, because that's what one learns in school, in chemistry lessons. The hydrogen sulfide, rotten eggs. So what they sense is, it's a school lesson that comes back to them, rotten eggs. So between Jadugoda and Bhuliti, there was a patch of unlit road, wasteland on either side, so that the car's headlights became mightier and milkier here. They're traveling in a car. Bhuliti, it was said, had arisen from coal, and into coal would it sink. It stood on a tenuous deck of earth, and underneath the deck, a colossal hollow was being scooped out by a raving, inexorable fire, like a great elemental army of termites feeding upon the coal. And one day the weight of man and of his makings that stood upon this thin and ever thinning wafer of land would become too much for it to bear, and the roof would cave in. It was a rather gentle way to think of an event which, in Vipul's imagination, promised to be a fiery implosion of the earth, a massive fulminant crash, accompanied by the boom and crackle of devastation. Vipul had heard of another place that was subsiding, Venice. But there the land appeared to be submitting graciously to its surrounding water, like the happy, uncomplicated death of somebody who has lived long and lived enough and dies unfussily simply because they are replete with life and have no wish to soak up any more of it. And as Venice slowly sank, its people, Vipul imagined, receding every year to drier heights, would continue to play their violins and their harps, serenading their city on its way underwater. But here in Bhulidi, sorrow would fall upon the people, the same kind of bountiful sorrow that the floods of the Damodar had every millennia wrought upon the coalfields, a wholly expected and wholly unmanning sorrow. So I thought I'd read that out as a kind of, it's like a chronicle of death foretold. You know that this land is not going to exist anymore. It's because of the fires here, underground fires. But also imagine the plight of the people living in these regions, who know that their land also is not going to exist anymore because a mining company is coming along. Coal has been discovered, mining company is coming along, and now this kind of thing is going to happen. So this is destruction from above rather than destruction from below. But it's, for 5 years, for a decade, people know that what they have around them is going to be lost forever, and one can only really, one can barely start to imagine the sorts of psychological crises that they go through. There's not just discomfiture or, but actual, I think trauma that they go through over an extended period of time. Anyhow, I thought that maybe because we are already closing on 7 o'clock, unless there are certain things that we would like to speak about, I might throw it open, and if would you? Oh yeah, your poem. Have you brought that along? Yes. Oh, fantastic! I didn't see a piece of paper in your hand, so
Oh, it's
on. Yeah, perfect.
because it was written in response to Dante's Divine Comedy. So there are 3 parts to this poem. I'll just read one. It's pretty long.
Can't hear you.
Sorry. I'm saying it was written in response to Dante's Divine Comedy, and it was in 3 parts, but it's rather long. So I'll just read one part, which is the Inferno floods. I thought of a love story being set in such a place. The Inferno floods. Nirjala, the coal carrier. Ashes coat mahua flowers. Heavy lifting cranes chafe the Shama bird's auspicious song. Photosynthesis is cancelled, vitamin D rare, till she arrives with the sun shining in her hair. Nirjala, whose name is a sacred vow, renouncing the cool relief of water, stands hip deep in a pool thick with coal dust and miner's sweat, but no memory of the translucence of raindrops. Jharya, an inferno where all circles of hell collapse into the perennial protest of shredded earth, where fractured elements go unheard, where hills recoil onto a heaving horizon. Sinkhole. Cars, trees, dogs, and people vanish without a trace. Whom do we grieve when there is nothing left to mourn? Flames get hungry too. Left too long to starve, they cannot suppress a sudden yawn. My Nirjala gleams like the Milky Way and unfurls somewhere behind my lungs a deep, full rag. I grow wings of moonlight and nestle into the lines of her palms. Nirjala, the river I wade into without drowning. My map to a universe not hissing steam anymore. My lucky stone tied to the wishing tree at the Kalyaneshwari temple. The birth giver, the nurturer, the silence gatherer, the uniter of elements, the filler of chasms, Nirjala, whose head on my pillow turns my dreams into the satiated rustle of sighing trees. My toes curl into soft, warm dirt, and I splash like a child in filthy colliery water. I hear my laughter. The flood. Coal worships fire, water gushes in canals, leaking perforations and flaming gashes. This is mined earth, a dragon whose roar pours flood, breath, fire. Can people drown in a land of fire? One day, water sluices into the earth's throat, where flames lie cauterizing her wounds. That day, dancing wildly hand in hand, they unfurl into this land beneath land, an annihilation that reverses the birthing of animals, turning them into floating fetuses. Somewhere she rests, my Nirjala in water, water in her rests. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Smita. And I'm sorry again, I'm so very much not a child of the digital age.
No, that's
I
perfectly fine.
I didn't see a
Please.
piece of paper and I
Please.
assume it wasn't with you. All right. As I was saying, I don't know what time frame we are operating under, but there was a particular question that I wanted to bring up with Chetan, but I'd like to know whether we should go in that direction, or would you like to ask questions of Chetan or of either of us?
Chetan.
And how would you like to do it?
Chetan.
So
Yes.
the
Yes.
question I had in mind was, well, when I first saw the artwork, this was 2 weeks ago. I came to have a look. There are two facets of it that struck me very powerfully. One is that it's replete with symbolism. Chetan doesn't really sort of push things in your face. There are subtleties. There are many subtleties here in what he's saying. To point out just one, this just gentleman here holding a placard with nothing on it. It's just blank white placard. Signifies the futility of protest,
Yeah.
according to Chetan, in these sorts of circumstances. The emptiness of it. No matter how much you protest, the greater sort of national rhetoric sweeps you away. I wanted to ask Chetan this question. What you have depicted all around here is actually really rather bleak. It's really very desolate. It's born, of course, out of sorrow. It is born out of sadness and almost desperation. But I often find that artists, in order to make their work more saleable, sometimes render it a little less desolate, less bleak. And you haven't taken any trouble to do so. So what struck me was that you've decided to embrace your artistic integrity and cling to it, not let go of any of it, and in my view, not really worry about whether uh, people will be perhaps a little bit put off by the bleakness of the scenes, the bleakness of the skeletons that you paint. Uh, so I want to know about the process psychologically that you went through, where you decided, well, I'm going to say it as it is, even though it's not direct, it's highly symbolic, but I'm going to portray it just as it is, chronicle what is going on without worrying, let's say, about the aesthetic side of things, that and
The
so on. The commercial side of things.
तो मुझे मेरा एक पहला पॉइंट यही है, मेरे जब भी मैं काम करता हूँ मैं हमेशा यही सोचता हूँ कि आर्ट वर्क में इमोशंस ब्रिंग करने चाहिए उनके अंदर, मतलब जब भी व्यूअर उसके साथ जब भी वो व्यूअर उस आर्ट वर्क को देते हो उसके अंदर सर्टन इमोशंस क्रिएट होने चाहिए। तो मेरा स्टार्टिंग से वही था। फॉर्म्स मेरे चेंज होंगे क्योंकि ये मैं हमेशा समझता हूँ कि जब मैं हार्श रियलिटी के बारे में बात कर रहा हूँ या फिर इस टॉपिक के बारे में बात कर रहा हूँ तो उसकी मेकिंग भी उसी प्रोसेस में होनी चाहिए। तो जब मैंने ये घर जब ये बनाए थे, रूइंस के जब स्कल्पचर्स बनाए थे, तो मुझे वही था कि मैं उस एसेंस को कैसे ला सकूँ जो लोगों ने वहाँ पे छोड़ के गए। मतलब मेरे लिए वो एक तरीके से ये है कि स्टोरी टेलर्स जैसे है। मतलब जैसे आज भी इधर फलक्रम में हम लोग बात कर रहे हैं तो यार फलक्रम में ये वॉल्स को पता रहेगा कि यहाँ पे डिस्कशन हुआ है। तो ऐसे टाइप का मैं इमोशंस को सोचता हूँ कि हमेशा लाऊं। और एस्थेटिक्स का मेरे अंदर कामों में मैं चाहता हूँ क्योंकि मैं बात कुछ पॉजिटिव वे का नहीं बात कर रहा हूँ, तो ऑब्वियसली वहाँ पे मे बी आफ्टर अ पॉइंट वो चेंज हो जाएगा क्योंकि प्रैक्टिस डेवलप होगी तो फॉर्म्स चेंज होंगे और वो चेंज होने वाला है आगे चल के। लेकिन अभी मैंने जब स्टार्ट किया तो मुझे जो एक प्योरली मेरे अंदर से जो आ रहा था मैंने उनको पेंट किया, मैंने बनाया। हाँ। वो वीडियो भी मेरे लिए बहुत ये है कि जो मेरा मास्टर्स का काम था जहाँ पे मैंने अपने आंखों में कोल्ड डस्ट को जाने दिया और फिर वो एज अ फॉर्म ऑफ रेजिस्टेंस कैसे हो सकता है, एज अ बॉडी एज अ रेजिस्टेंस कैसे फंक्शन कर सकता है, उसको मैंने वो वीडियो बनाया।
नहीं, आपके काम में वो जो आपका जो आंग्स है, जो ग्रीफ है आपके अंदर, वो उस वजह से वो भयावह ज्यादा लगता है। आई थिंक दैट इज व्हाट रोहित वाज सेइंग, या
And he doesn't tone it down.
he doesn't want temper. It's pure raw grief, anger.
And it's a little bit in relation to the kind of stuff we do, Smita. It's very much a parallel to the way in which we decide to write. You write your Nirjala, or I write my fiction. We don't write for for the popular taste, so to speak, right? We just want to say what we want to say.
Mining really won't sell anyway. I mean, being anti-mining won't sell anything. Yeah.
That's true. But speaking more generally, let's say of literary fiction,
Yeah.
the kind of fiction that I like to write, I know that there will not be a great readership for it, but one has to stay true to one's artistic impulse and one's own artistic being, and that is what I think really echoes in me when I see Chetan's artwork over here. So that was the second thing that was on my mind, and unless there is some other reading or something that we wish to do, I would really very much like to have views from anyone and everyone who might be interested in asking something.
I'm really curious to see the sculptures. Also, yeah.
You can move around and maybe have a one-to-one. That would be much more experiential than
There's actually a lot to talk about, but
yeah, that's what we aim for.
Yeah. In fact, before this started, I was actually asking him about some of the symbolism in some of his drawings and paintings. So maybe that is a really nice idea that we take a
Yeah.
look and speak to him and
Yeah.
speak to one another.
Yeah, definitely. Feel free to stick around for as long as you like. And I think we're at the end of the chai, but that's okay. We are
Actually, I
on
had
here.
a question
Sure.
for Chetan. Because there are different mediums and also materials that we're using. So there's the oil, there's the charcoal, there's the sculpture, and also I had a glimpse of the photos. And I think I'm just curious. Perhaps this is obviously the way in which the houses crack. They are demanding to be realized sculpturally, perhaps. How do you know that? I mean, how does it work? I mean, maybe you know it instinctively, but what are there different ways? Because you've got video at the back. They're also talking to each other in this room. All the media. So you want to tell us anything, or is it too like, oh God, no, I don't want to answer this question. That's also okay. So just because I'm quite fascinated by that.
Yeah.
By the is sort of like a lattice thing that is
Yeah,
happening.
and
Yeah.
actually also in such a small space.
Yes,
Hmm.
one kind of
Room space.
yeah. There's a lot going on, and
Yeah.
it's a sort of there's a feeling of I don't know. I just have to know what
I did my master's in sculpture and bachelor and master in sculpture. I started painting from last
Recently.
recently.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
He's, yeah.
what I do for my artwork when I choose what to do, because I did lots of performances also. So whenever I had some thought, मैं पहले उसको सोचता हूँ कि वो इसमें रिफ्लेक्ट अच्छा होगा. मैं उसको पेंट करता था. आई डोंट नो कैसा पेंट करता हूँ उसको मैं वीडियो को जो है. तो क्योंकि वो मेरे लिए वो ये है कि वो कौन से मीडियम में कौन सा आर्ट वर्क फिट होता है वो आर्टिस्ट को समझना जरूरी है. मतलब यही पेंट ये शायद स्कल्पचर में कैसा दिखता है तो मेरे लिए वो एक ही है. या फिर वो लैंडस्केप की डेप्थनेस में स्कल्पचर में उसका अलग डायमेंशन है. तो क्योंकि इसमें पर्सपेक्टिव के साथ अपन प्ले कर सकते हैं. जैसे टू डायमेंशनल चीज होती है पेंटिंग और पर्सपेक्ट वीडियो से या फिर ये है तो उसमें अपन पर्सपेक्टिव के साथ ये कर सकते हैं. तो मैं वैसे चूज करता हूँ कि स्केचेस रिसर्च फिर उसके मीडियम्स हो सकते हैं ट्रायल्स एंड एरर्स क्योंकि वो उसके बाद ही वो चीज़ें
I think overall Sapuna is this thing of experimentation and he seems to be working from the beginning parallelly. So he studied sculpture for 6 years and you see that in his technique with the sculpture. But I think it's also perhaps part of contemporary art practice today where artists are sort of parallelly exploring. They don't see their practice sort of medium based or anchored in any one medium.
I have a question.
I think I saw the hand at the back, the arm at the back go up first. So if you could just hold on for a minute. Yeah, please.
I have a question about that one, the artwork at the back. Yeah.
Yes.
So, there's a sense of dreariness across the colors. There's a sense of dreariness across the colors, oils, charcoals, right? Which is like understandable. That one painting is a sharp shift from the sense. The sense of the painting itself is not non-dreary, but the colors have a sharp shift. So I just wanted to. I was wondering. I was curious actually about why that colorscape.
एक्चुअली उसके उस काम के दो पर्सपेक्टिव है. एक तो अभी डे टू डे लाइफ में जो इंडियन इसमें जो चल रहा है जो रूइंस क्रिएट किए जा रहे हैं ये थ्रू द गवर्नमेंट एंड थ्रू द पावर, तो जो कलर स्कीम है मैंने उसमें वो चूज़ किया था। और एक जो होम लॉस होता है तो फिर वो एक लोग अपने मतलब अपने घर को कैसे वो लोग पकड़ के रखा है। तो एक आर्टिस्ट है कोलविज कैट करके, तो उनका एक प्रिंट है तो जिसमें वो चाइल्ड को, तो उनके रेफरेंस के साथ मैंने वो एक ये बनाया था। लेकिन कलर स्कीम मैंने वैसे चूज़ किया था कि जैसे ब्लू है, ग्रीन और ऑरेंज, तो दैट कॉन्फ्लिक्ट विच इज़ गोइंग ऑन ऑल ओवर द कंट्री, तो उसके कलर्स मैंने चूज़ किए थे।
You guys spoke about a lot of different things. One was illegal employment of women, houses showing up with cracks, etc. So are we speaking against coal mining per se, or is it that it should be managed in a better way? And if so, if we are protesting mining, then what is the solution? Since India is a very big country with 1.3 billion people, so what should be the way to go? Or are we simply saying that wages should be fair, people should be relocated and given compensation, etc., so that they're not living in these places?
Well, it's human nature to be thirsty for energy, thirsty for minerals, and there are needs to be fulfilled. So some of this is inevitable and inexorable, but the human price that is paid, there are two things to it. One is that it need not be so high. The compensation, as you're rightly saying, if that is attended to properly, then that can actually atone for a lot of what is going on. But the second, I would add another dimension to it and say that these stories are not often told at all. I mean, very rarely told. There's just a huge silence, shroud of silence over them. And now that is also probably not manufactured.
It is manufactured.
Some of it may be.
No.
Yeah, but I'm saying not enough people are writing about it. Now, for instance, so many of us that have grown up in the coal fields, I hardly find anyone writing about these sorts of things. Yeah.
Everyone is.
Even in fiction.
People have become used to it.
There's a great sense of desensitization towards human suffering.
See, when these dams are also made, we will always walk into a gathering there and say, oh my God, Neha Parker, the kind of problems she creates, Arundhati, the kind of problems she creates, they don't want development, right? So that is the problem. Because of a particular kind of narrative to hold politically, this has to be completely muffled, silenced. I think that is where the cruelty happens. The other thing is governance-wise. Why can't these people be treated as, I mean, they are at risk. They are at such high risk. So why is there such rampant corruption even in the housing projects that are being created for them?
Yeah.
Their money will get embezzled, the contracts will go to, whatever. I mean, so the problem, because of the silencing, because of this, is that this problem has become so ugly. And then the uglier it becomes, the more force is needed to muffle it further, to silence it further. And coal is like gold, it's like oil. So anyway, gangs of Wasipur would happen, people would kill each other. It's just a lot of money. So actually this needs to be handled with so much more care, like what is happening with the forests today. They are so, they want to dance and go and cut RA. They want us to congratulate them. That is my problem. Why aren't there any, why isn't there an acknowledgement to what you're doing?
Absolutely, yeah. That sensitivity is, yeah.
I have a question, because what I'm hearing is that the situation is very bleak in the
way everything is set up. So I'd like to ask the artist, when you create work like this, what is your hope? Is there a hope, or is it just that you feel the need to express? I'm very curious to on the choice of subject. I understand that's personal.
Yeah, hope. I think I will always feel that art can bring a change. So that painting is all about that. Yeah. So it's a painting where I made a man who is watering to the dead tree, and it's pouring. The water is leaking out from the crates. It's like in the hope that it will turn into green. What we as a human can do is we can do put a efforts, right? So I don't know where I am. I don't know where I stand. It will change or not. I don't know. My part is to show what is happening in Chandrapur. That is my part. That's why this painting is all about. The board is empty. If someone has a different opinion, they can imagine that words or phrases and that empty board, and they can leave the gallery.
It could even be a pro-mining protest.
Yeah.
I like what you said, one of the lines in your poem that says, "Who will be left to mourn?" That's a very, very insightful, sensitive, beautiful line. And I think the reason I am here is because there is hopelessness in this exhibition. I am not a purveyor of hope. and yeah, I'm not a purveyor. And this is premature. We are giving ourselves hope. Absolutely premature. What I like about the exhibition is it's dark, it's bleak. It says, go keep watering the dead plant. And I think, coming back to your line, if we can learn to mourn, then the process of recovery can start. That is the function of a true artist. In fact, as I enter, you use the sentence, I don't know whether you remember what you said, but speaking the truth is art, that's it. And this is what the exhibition is all about. The rest is all we can go home and have coffee.
Yeah.
And also, I think because of Chetan's truth, the art, this is something which very few people talk about, and yet, his work. Now, we are three voices who are talking about this. So, some amount of unsilencing is happening.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and this is collective unsilencing.
Please, yeah.
Thank you so much for your insights and your reflections. And I would like to pose two questions. One at the very real level of art, not just as passion, but art as a form of sustenance, whether it's spiritual sustenance or financial sustenance. And I don't know if there might be a price list somewhere for these artworks, or if they are sitting as provocations beyond. If they are not sitting as just provocations, what then becomes your journey in costing this art? Because again, it might be seen as trading off a situation that you have then the platform to trade off. So whether you're, the poet writing about war and you're the one traveling across the world and you're reciting all the poems about war and you're getting paid and you're in 5-star hotels, yes, people get to hear about war, but the fact is your bank account also affords you to not be at that war space. And the second one, and this would go to all of you, by the way. So, you publish a book because you want as many people to get it. You write the poem and recite the poem, so you want as many people to hear it. But that's not to say you're guilty for doing that, because again, without those voices, without those the brushstrokes, without the words, you aren't then able to unsilence or undo the silencing that is higher funded than anything that you would actually profit. The reason I ask this is because there was a sense of the industry in which I would be very happy, well, not say happy, but I would be captivated were I to walk into a room, or whether it's a dining room or it's in a hotel, and I find this artwork there. I would wonder what the artist did, and of course, any of the story would get lost, but the art sits as a visual thing that I can then possess. So that is my question. I hope it was not so obtuse that you didn't go back down to
No, not at all, not at all.
And then there's a second provocation, which is down to, I'm sitting here, I'm hearing this, and I've been very appreciative of the kind of conversation you held, because it isn't a conversation that apologizes for the state of this happening. It is also not a conversation that is trying to convince anybody from anywhere else that this conversation needs to be platformed anywhere else other than here. So my second question is, down to learning how to mourn and hope, is where then do you plant the seeds, understanding the gravity and how pervasive the silencing has gone to people who might just look at your art as, wouldn't it be nice to experience that? Or thank God I don't have to experience that. Still in India, how does it become the national conversation? Because while yours might be mining, somebody else's is the forest. While somebody else's is the forest, it might be the mangroves for somebody else. It might be water for somebody else. It might be. So how do you then see this, and speaking from a feminist perspective, in a way of saying, we're not just saying we're talking about the land because people are developing cancers or whatever, because someone somewhere is going to get a PhD in studying the impacts of water pollution from that, and that will result in something else. So do we guilt them for wanting to study the impact of the water poisoning, or do we say, thank you for doing that work? So how do we bring these conversations together?
With your permission, yes, there is a price list.
Yeah,
there is a price list. So these are for sale as well, and I'll let Chetan speak about the commercial side of things. That was the first question that you.
I would understand that they couldn't be, but
No, that was the first thing that you asked. So, Chetan, how do you see this commercially?
I mean, I think, can I step in here?
Yeah.
I think that these are for sale because the artist has to make a living. He could have painted something else entirely decorative, that would have been for sale too, right? So by his work being on sale, we're not selling, of course, and just for your entertainment, or just as a point of interest, not a single work has been sold. All of they are for sale.
So my question primarily is at the valuing process, right? Because you understand that, yes, it should be for sale. However, when you have, what is the relationship you then have with costing the work, understanding the content of the work? Because while I might look at this and say, yes, this would be perfect for my bedroom, as an aesthetic. And you're just like, oh no. So somebody might look at this and say, oh, I wouldn't want that. Whereas I would say, perfect for a bedroom, perfect for a Gothic mansion. I have a buyer who's ready to pay $7 million for that piece because it looks out over the ocean. So
the works are priced in terms of how you value this work. So this work is valued like as though any other work of this artist at the stage of his career is valued. It's valued based on how many years the artist has been practicing, where his work lies right now. It's valued at that. It's valued at entry level pricing based on based on a market that pre-exists. It's not, so it's not valued at anything other than that. And I think any other value is what you take away from it, right? But I would just talk about
thank you.
that in terms of, because that's a question of market more than, I mean, you may have someone might want to pay $7 million for this, but this is only worth X amount of money. So, I mean, or we're selling it for that, or even if you offer us 7 million, we wouldn't sell it to you for that much. We'll say, this is the price and this is what we're selling it at. And that is based on a general, a wider market context of contemporary art in the city, in this space. And I don't think that the artists sort of, I don't know what more to say about that. But
So, I mean, artistic practices and commerce, very hardly they align. And when you said that if somebody is a successful poet, they are going around and getting paid. I mean, Shabana Chatterjee, she's one of the most celebrated Indian poets who's sitting right next to me. I mean, she'll tell you, I had once asked her, I was younger, stupider and more hopeful at that time.
yeah.
I asked her, Shampoo, how does one make money writing books? Okay. And Shampoo said, you don't make money writing books. At least in India we do. So, of course, a lot of people do. A lot of people do. They know the kind of books they want to write, they know the kind of books they have to sell. So, like Rohit was just saying that, we are responding to our art. We are responding to certain things that we want to respond to. We don't really know who on the other side wants to listen to this.
Yeah, we don't have an audience in mind. We're just doing it for our sake, our own, well, you could call it artistic fulfillment, or you could call it that urge and that impulse that will not be quelled. It has to assert itself. You are the medium. You become just the conveyance. You're just, you can't help what you're doing in a way. Whereas there is this other pool of writers, they're much smaller in number, but at the bottom of what they write is a hard-nosed calculation of what is going to sell in the present day climate of opinion and of need. So self-help books, if it's self-help books that will sell, then I'll write a self-help book. That's the kind of thing that happens.
Yeah, there's a different kind of commerce too.
And
Yeah.
that's the same for artists. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the same for an art market. I mean, as someone who runs a space, I could choose to show something as I said, entirely decorative.
Yeah.
That would, look perfectly lovely in anyone's home and be entirely interchangeable between anyone's home. But that's not important enough to me. So this is the value that I add to this, showing this work and everything that the work brings with it, and the conversation that the work brings with it is what is important to me. That is really at the heart of, I think at the heart of artistic practice that really means anything or saying something about our economic, social, cultural spaces that we occupy, the lives that we live.
Also, I think it's a little bit of refusal to sort of feel powerless. It's a little bit of that, I think.
Refusal to see what's right here.
The refusal to feel powerless, I mean, that there's nothing you can do. Yes, you can write about it. You can tell the story of someone who would be erased permanently.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what you do.
Something sort of taking on from there. And I've been thinking, like whenever we work with the stories of, communities, and this is your community, I was wondering, does your community, has it happened that the community has had a chance, or is it something that you hope for, that the community has a chance to see the artwork, or what their response to it is? Yeah, is that something you hope? Is that something that happened?
Yeah.
And I think that
That's,
question ties back
There is,
into
there is a very interesting fault line between in what she said. She used the word your community 3 times. That's the problem. Your community, not ours. We have come here for the exhibition.
but to get back to the question,
No, that's the whole fault line. It is your community. Why should his community see his work? Because that's the lived experience.
I don't think that's true. I
No.
think there's a lot of politics
No,
around.
I'm not saying you did it deliberately, but
No, that's all
but
fine.
it is the fault with our thinking that this is
No,
your
there's the question comes from a place of thinking, what is when you take on, when you address, whether it is in writing or in visual art, anything, there is a huge politics that is being more and more discussed. When you represent the truth of a space or a people, what
Let
is
you have the permission to also talk about
what is the
This is-
engagement?
this is-
What is the engagement that you do with them? Do you think about it? I think it's a very valid question. That's a very valid discourse going on in the artistic space, because it is also worrying about things like extraction and appropriation. I don't think it's come in that spirit. It's a curiosity that has come to, because it is a discourse going on in the art world. So if you don't mind answering.
I agree.
Is it even
So
worse?
please,
Have you asked for permission? Can I please take your sad story and write? This is even worse. That's the pitch that we are going to. Can
Yeah,
you
but,
ask him permission?
if I may exercise the privilege of the moderator, could I just say that a question has been posed, and I think I would like to invite Chetan to respond to that question. So the question is very specific. For example, Chetan, would you like people from your own community around Chandrapur that you have grown up with, how much would you like them to see your art and respond to it, you know? And
हाँ
I mean, this,
तो
so
अभी हमने एक स्पेस ओपन किया है मेरे गांव में, एक स्टूडियो जस्ट अभी 1 महीने पहले हुआ है उसका। तो ये शो शायद यहाँ से उधर ही डिस्प्ले होने वाला। अगर आर्टवर्क्स नहीं जा पाए, सेल हो गए, जो भी हुआ, तो फोटोग्राफ्स वहाँ पे प्रिंट होके वो उसी कम्युनिटी के साथ ये करना है। तो वो है, आई एम वेरी कॉन्शियस अबाउट द कम्युनिटी। तो है।
If I could just take it back to that second question around how what the network or web of the multi-communities with multi-concerns who are all experiencing this and not to be siloed, understanding that, of course, there are
yes,
there's this in India, but there's also so many other things in India. So how do we make this enough?
so
of a concern?
could I respond to that through the experience that I've had with my own novel? Let's say I wrote this novel that's set in the coal fields, and that's where I grew up. Now, I certainly had this curiosity about, as you might call it, the local. That is to say, I had this curiosity as to whether this novel that I was writing would actually appeal to and find echoes in people who had grown up in the same region. So that's the local. But I also certainly was wondering all the time whether it would have any appeal for someone who did not grow up in the coal fields, and someone who hasn't had any experience of growing up in those sorts of outbacks. These are outbacks in the hinterland of the country. But let's say an out and out urban dweller, someone who's grown up in a city and hasn't really experienced semi-rural life and so on. What would they think about this novel? Now, my experience has been very, very fortunately that leave alone the style in which I've written it, because the style has attracted a bit of adverse reaction every here and there. But I chose to stick with the style as, again, a matter of artistic impulse. I don't want to desert the urge to write or use the diction that I wish to use. But what I found interestingly was that yes, the work did eventually turn out to mirror the experiences of those who had grown up in the coal fields. So I felt I had done a fair enough evocation. But to my astonishment, to my great astonishment, out and out city dwellers also have written in to me saying that they liked it. Let's say that they liked it because it gave them a window into another sort of world altogether, into another universe that exists in this country, but they hadn't really been able to sample even through literature, let alone going there in person. Because the coal fields, as I was saying, Smita, they have hardly been written about. These sorts of regions just they're a blank on the artistic landscape. So I found that if you write a story about something that is extremely local, it can also at the same time be very universal. Be universal. Just as when I was growing up in the coal fields, these sorts of regions, cut off from pretty much anywhere else in the world, and there was no communication then, there was no TV, there were no phones, let alone mobile phones, there were no land phones in those regions either that worked. There was no television, we only had radio, but yet I and my friends used to read about, and this is described in my book, used to read about and keep fantasizing about the lives that Archie and Veronica lived out in America, that Tarzan lived out in the jungles of Africa. All of it a complete bogus, of course, a sham. But we like to inhabit other spaces as well. We wish to inhabit in our imagination spaces that we have never experienced. And thankfully, that is true also of in the reverse direction. That people who live, let's say, in Africa or in America, they have also, well, I can't talk about Africa, but in America, there have been people responding to my novel and saying, well, the coal fields of India, oh, I see, so this is the sort of life that also can exist. And one of the professors at a Canadian university actually took a chapter from my novel and prescribed it as part of his syllabus on, I forget the name of the course, but it was something to do with cross-cultural learning. So I hope that answers your question. That is, there's this multiplicity of,
I think mine is more, again, it's around this internetworking of the subverted or subjugated voices, right? It is in your art forms.
I think it's for curators like Aish, I think this is where, they become the nodal points. I mean, because they're all, like you said, somebody's protesting for deforestation, somebody's protesting for damming of rivers, right? I think, the curators have to become aware of it. And, once they become nodal points, then I think what Rohit said about local being universal, I think then, it will all sort of come together in some way. But as an artist, I think we do what we do.
Can I ask Chetan another question? I'm very curious. I'm going to speak to you separately about this. Also very curious about the studio space that you're setting up. No, I really am, because what, one of the things that all of you have been talking about the structures of oppression that exist in silence that create this to happen, that there's, what I keep hearing is a lack of magic, a lack of will, but also a lack of imagination. We need energy. This is the only way to get energy. Can we minimize damage? Why don't we have other imaginations? Right? There's no reason for us to stay stuck in this frame. Right? Let's try failure somewhere else. Right? But what has been happening, and I work in theatre, so I've seen this happen where a lot of times communities whose life is this is the reality of your life, right? So this is the frame that and you don't necessarily see other imaginations, right? And so I'll just quickly give an example. I'll just take province case. We work closely with one of my friends. He's a Chara from the Chara community, with the denotified tribals, right? One of the denotified tribes. And what they did in their community, they set up a library, they began theatre, but what they started doing is playing back their lives to their communities. And this story has happened many times. It happened in Palestine a lot also. You play back. Now, why do you play back? Which is where the question of community engagement comes in. Why do you play back? Actually, when you're living inside an oppression, right, what happens is you get used to that as your reality. When you start playing back, other stories become possible about your own lives. You can start seeing, art helps you see things from another lens, which sometimes you're unable to do. And I've seen very interesting playouts, mostly in the theatre space, but I've seen very interesting playouts of what happens to a community when somebody offers another lens to look. I mean, see, art will only do that one lens. The community will do whatever it has to. So, because I'm interested in all this, I'm very curious to ask you about your studio and what you're thinking, like the imagination of this space. Since you're locating it there, you could locate it anywhere else. You're locating it there. So I'm very curious to know what you're thinking about, what you're dreaming of in that space.
तो मैंने जस्ट अभी वहाँ से शिफ्ट करके मैंने गांव में अपना शिफ्ट किया है। तो वहाँ पे एक क्योंकि मेरी जीजा जी भी गणपति और ये सब बनाते हैं, तो उनके लिए भी एक स्पेस चाहिए था, क्योंकि जस्ट उनका मैरिज हुआ है, तो वो बच्चों को पढ़ाना चाहते। तो एक हमने एक ज़मीन है, वहाँ पे हमने टेंट बांधा है। टेंट मीन्स स्ट्रक्चर, क्या बोलते हैं उसका? हाँ, तो वहाँ पे हम लोग इसके प्रिंट्स या फिर फोटोग्राफ, वहाँ पे फोटोग्राफ से अगर आपने देखा होगा तो उसके प्रिंट्स हम लोग रख के, और मेरे पुराने जो मास्टर्स के स्कल्पचर्स है वो भी आर्ट वर्क पूरे मेरे घर में है अभी, तो उनको डिस्प्ले करके हम लोग उन लोगों को इनवाइट करना चाहते हैं जो उस सराउंडिंग में है। तो एज ऑफ नाउ वो प्लान है, क्योंकि वो अगेन वो बहुत सारा चीज़ें उसके साथ इन्वॉल्व होती है, तुमको उनके साथ जुड़ना पड़ेगा, तुमको उनकी अंडरस्टैंडिंग होनी चाहिए। तो वो डेवलप कैसे होगा एज अ कम्युनिटी बेस्ड प्रैक्टिसेस, तो वो मुझे अभी आइडिया नहीं है, क्योंकि जस्ट क्योंकि अभी तो जस्ट मुझे एक्चुअली में टाइम ही नहीं मिला है खुद के लिए भी।
आप शिफ्ट क्यों कर रहे हो बड़ौदा से?
कहाँ पे?
आप बड़ौदा से शिफ्ट क्यों कर रहे हो?
बड़ौदा मुझे उतना भाता नहीं है तो मैं उधर शिफ्ट हो गया।
Samira, I mean, because I've had this conversation with him and another artist, in the same space, and it's a very conscious choice for them to shift their studios back home. I think that part of their studios functioning out of where this work comes from, and although there isn't like a plan, an exact plan right now as to what that space will be or what it will do, but it will definitely be a functioning studio for more than one artist, and not necessarily contemporary trained artists like Chetan or like Rahul, but like he said, there's Jijaji who makes contemporary motifs and other people like that. So I think it's a very new, something that they've just begun working on. They've just got the studio ready, and I think over the next year or two, it will develop. Yeah, it will develop as a community space. We'll send people, we'll bring people. There will be an exchange between that, and
so you're collaborating on making that.
No, I'm not collaborating, but as they work, we'll have an exchange of some kind. That will an ongoing, long-standing kind of understanding. But it's their space, but this space is there as a sort of parallel center to bring work and people and ideas and conversations and same people there. But that's exactly what he said to me, that ये शो होने के बाद मैं गांव में लेके जाके वहाँ पे दिखाऊंगा। Yeah, it's good.